Dean was still up, wasn't it? Angus and Dean was still up midnight. They brought home from the thing.
The Holy Spirit is here and His power is real. And it can happen and it probably will. Something very good, something good is going on around here. There is a light that shines to make the darkness reveal. Power and work, but there's nothing to feel. Something very good, something good is going on around here. This is a church on fire. This is the Holy Spirit flame. We have a burning desire to lift up Jesus' name. Let fire burn in every heart, like the way you beat the heart. Let the flame of love burn higher. This is a church on fire. The Holy Spirit is here and His power is real. Yeah, it can happen and it probably will. Something very good, something good is going on around here. There is a light that shines to make the darkness reveal. Power and work, but there's nothing to feel. Something very good, something good is going on around here. This is our church on fire. This is the Holy Spirit flame. We have a burning desire to lift up Jesus' name. Let fire burn in every heart, like the way you keep the dark. Let the flame of love burn higher. This is a church on fire. This is a church on fire. This is the Holy Spirit flame. We have a burning desire to lift up Jesus' name. Let fire burn in every heart, like the way you keep the dark. Let the flame of love burn higher. This is a church on fire. Let fire burn in every heart, like the way you keep the dark. Let the flame of love burn higher. This is a church on fire. Let fire burn in every heart, like the way you keep the dark. Let the flame of love burn higher. This is a church on fire. I am sure all of heaven has heard me cry as I tell you all the reasons why this life is just too hard. Day by day, without fail, I'm finding everything I need in everything that you are to me. Every time you seem a little bit closer, I never want to leave, I want to stay in your warm embrace. Oh, basking in the glory shining from your face. And every time I
her?
I didn't mean to kill her. Really, I didn't. It's just that he was on fire.
Hail to Dorothy! The wicked witch is dead! Hey! Hail to Dorothy! The wicked witch is dead!
The broom. May we have it?
Please, and take it with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Now we can go back to the wizard and tell him the wicked witch is dead.
The wicked witch is dead!
And I believe my eyes. Why have you come back?
Please, sir, we've done what you told us. We brought you the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. We melted her.
Oh, you liquidated her, eh? Very resourceful.
Yes, sir. So we'd like you to keep your promise to us, if you please, sir.
Not so fast. Not so fast. I'll have to give the matter a little thought. Go away and come back tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Oh, but I want to go home now.
You've had plenty of time already.
Yeah. Do not arouse the wrath of the great and powerful Oz. I said come back tomorrow.
If you are really great and powerful, you'll keep your promises.
Do you presume to criticize the great Oz? You ungrateful creatures think yourselves lucky that I'm giving you audience tomorrow instead of 20 years from now. Oh, the great Oz has spoken. Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
You are? I don't believe you.
No, I'm afraid it's true. There's no other wizard except me.
You humbug!
Yes, it's exactly so. I'm a humbug.
We're always afraid of being found out, having the curtain pulled back. There's this weird dictator in North Korea who, unlike most dictators, he didn't take power at gunpoint, march into the palace and stage a military coup. He inherited the dictatorship from his father. And apparently he's just eat up with insecurities and has some really odd ways of compensating, overcompensating. And I guess nobody laughs at you when you have the power to have him killed. But he's really short. I mean, even for a Korean, he's really short. And he, instead of pretending that doesn't bother him, he tries to look taller. And one of the ways he does that is by wearing these high platform shoes, which is silly enough by itself, but he doesn't stop there. He poofs up his hair. And his hair is not terribly thick to start with. And he's got it straight up like 6 inches. And people are supposed to think he's taller because of that. There was a guy I worked with at a department store when I was in college. And I was self-conscious about being skinny at the time. And really wanted to, have big muscles, and muscles wouldn't stick to me no matter what I did. And this guy was really short, and we both worked in the men's clothing department in this store. And so we're talking about difficulty of finding things our size in the store. And I was talking about they don't have my waist size in the men's department. It's a 30-inch waist, and the smallest sizes they carry are 32, and it's really frustrating. And instead of, there's a reason that we call vulnerability vulnerability. You make yourself vulnerable to being responded to in a way you don't want to be responded to. Instead of saying, yeah, I understand, I have the same difficulty finding things that fit me, he said, yeah, you're small. I wouldn't remember this guy at all. It's nearly 30 years now, except for that one conversation.
Yeah.
Because he struck at my insecurities in 2 ways. One, he points at my inadequacy, and then he denies his own that makes me feel superior. He's not small, I'm small. And I don't remember what my actual response was. I only remember the response in my head that went on exhaustively. I wanted to put my elbow on his head. I'm lean, you're small. I'm pretty sure I didn't do that. But I had that conversation for days after that. Because I felt I was being defined by something I didn't want to be defined by. There's a guy in the Bible, and I think, there are a lot of people lived in the world, a lot of people lived in Israel at the time the New Testament was being written. And it's occurred to me to just be incredibly cool to be one of those few people that gets a mention, even in passing, in the Bible. And for all time, everybody's going to know your name. It'd be kind of a shame if it's this guy Demas that only gets mentioned twice. Once he's a co-worker of Paul's, and the second one, the only other time he's mentioned is to say he's abandoned Paul and left the faith. And well, that would be kind of, I'd rather not be mentioned at all. Zaccheus, the Bible tells us three things about him. He is the chief tax collector, he's rich, and he's short. And the little title that Bible translations give to different passages, I guess just to help you find things easier. In that story, a couple of the Bible translations, the little heading, the title for this story is Zaccheus, the tax collector. That is who he was. It wasn't just what he did. If you ask, who is Zaccheus, the answer is, he's the tax collector. That's who he is. And he's short. No guy likes to be short. We all want to be at least 6 foot tall. And it's tough not to find your identity in that if you're significantly shorter than that. I know a lot of guys 5'3", 5'4", 5'5", with real chips on their shoulders that, like the Korean guy, have odd ways of trying to compensate for that. And maybe Zaccheus was a little bit like that. Certainly he chose a career path that gave him wealth, gave him power, but that didn't make him popular. That probably to understand this story completely, have to start by defining two terms and understanding what they meant in the social ladder of Israel. And maybe the very bottom is tax collector, because the people of Israel are a fiercely proud, independent people, and they're confident that they are God's chosen people. And yet they've been conquered by people that are bigger than them and stronger than them, and in some ways culturally superior and technologically superior and militarily overwhelmingly superior, and utterly ruthless and cruel. They have, in a brutal world, a world that was primitive and savage to start with, these guys had discovered and developed ways to punish people that were monstrous even by the standards of that day. And that's who ruled Israel. And they build roads throughout their empire, but only because they need their army to be able to move quickly to get to your country, to kill you if you try to rise up against them. And the worst thing about having these soldiers marching through your street that have the power and the right to throw their pack at you and make you carry it for them if they don't want to, and whose courts you have to go to in the hope of receiving justice instead of to your own leaders. The worst thing about it all was the way they pay for that empire, to maintain it, to hold on to power, to be able to continue to exploit and oppress you and your people. The way they pay for that is they tax you. So you get to pay for your own oppression. And still worse is the person who collects those taxes is not a Roman. They find somebody among your own people who's willing to sell out his own people and collaborate with the enemy and be the tax collector for the oppressor and the exploiter of his people. At the other end, when it comes to titles in Israel, the top might simply be children of Abraham, because the thing that made the people of Israel special in their own minds was that a long time ago, God had told their first ancestor, I'm going to make a special people of you. Your descendants will be a great nation. There will be more of your descendants than the stars in the sky, and they will be looked to by the rest of the world as a privileged and special people. You're God's chosen. And God first made that promise to Abraham, and He made it again to Abraham's son, Abraham's grandson, and great-grandson, to King David, and to the prophets after that. And to be able to say, I am a son of Abraham, was to say an extraordinary thing that no one outside Israel could say. Of all the nations of the world, they were the nation that God had chosen, and by birthright, just because they were born to Abraham's descendants, they had promises they could claim from the God of the universe. Because they could say, I'm Abraham's son, they could say, all those promises that God made to Abraham, He made to me. That's the top. And tax collector is the bottom. And Zaccheus has thrown away everything that it meant to be a son of Abraham in order to be a tax collector. What he got in return was, he's wealthy. And if people still laugh at him, it's not to his face. Zaccheus hears that a celebrity is passing through town. And the story in the Bible actually says Jesus was passing through. But they didn't have celebrity magazines with all the gossip about Hollywood. They didn't have movies. They didn't even have malls to hang out in. If you wanted to entertain yourself, there were pretty limited ways of doing it in those days. So when somebody like Jesus passes through, even if you're not religious, even if you don't care whether He's God or not, He's doing miracles. And it's the only show in town. And the story just says Zaccheus wanted to see who Jesus was. He wasn't going to Him for a miracle. It doesn't say he was going to Him for healing or solve any problem. It just says he wanted to see who Jesus was. The problem with that is Jesus isn't going to be on television in those days. Zaccheus is short, and he's not going to be able to see Him through the crowd, even if he otherwise might be able to catch a glimpse of Him. The people in that crowd will make sure he doesn't get to see Jesus. It's just too good an opportunity when the tax collector is in a big jostling crowd anyway. It's just too good an opportunity to pass up the chance to elbow him in the side of the head, because he's not going to know whose elbow it was, or to kick him in the shins. He's likely to go home bruised. But he wants to see who Jesus was, and he recognizes he's not going to be able to do it this way. So he runs ahead of the crowd, climbs a tree. He's long past caring whether anybody likes him or not. It doesn't matter what he looks like. He's going to climb a tree, grown man, to see Jesus, to get a look at Him. Jesus comes along to that spot where Zaccheus is in the tree. And it seems like to me there's several different ways Jesus could have responded to Zaccheus. He could have acted like he didn't see him at all and walked on by, because it doesn't say Zaccheus tried to initiate any conversation with him. He could have played to the crowd, looked at Zaccheus, gave kind of a knowing smirk, and shook his head to the crowd to say, yeah, I know who he is, and what a joke, what a loser, you're right. And the crowd will love that. And he could have walked on by. Or he could have stopped and started preaching at Zaccheus and denouncing him in a way that Jesus could do, but the people of that town would have been afraid to do, and tell him off and name his sins and tell him he's going to hell if he doesn't straighten up. And the crowd would love that. And that might have seemed like the right approach, because he was a very bad man. And he had done some very bad things. But that wasn't what Jesus did either. Instead, Jesus looks up in the tree and says, "Hey, Zaccheus, mate, I would love to go to your house for dinner tonight." Dinner parties, for people that throw dinner parties, are a big deal. They say who's important and who's not important. Washington, D.C., it's a huge thing, the party circuit, and who's on the list to get invited to which parties says who's in and who's out. I was watching a movie the other day, the original Pink Panther, and there's this chunky American lady who's rich but not particularly classy, and she's at a ski resort in Europe, and at the same ski resort there's this princess, and the rich American lady is falling all over herself to find a way to get this princess to come to her party, because that says she's on the same social level as the princess, and she can say, "The princess is my friend, she came to my party." All of that is wrapped up in Jesus inviting himself to be a guest at Zaccheus' house at a dinner party. Because the only people going to come to Zaccheus' dinner parties are other tax collectors, prostitutes. There may be money and beauty there, but there's nobody acceptable there. There's nobody high up on the social ladder there. Jesus does something extraordinary without regard to all the bad things that Zaccheus has done. Jesus in that moment saying, "I want to come to your house for dinner," is saying, "I don't define you by the worst things that you've done." And Zaccheus understands that. And Jesus didn't just whisper that in Zaccheus' ear. Zaccheus is in a tree. Jesus just said in front of the whole town, "Zaccheus and I are mates." And Zaccheus can hardly contain himself. With no further prompting than that, walls begin to crumble that he has spent his whole life building. And he just starts giving money away. Because that's what he's got to give. And because that's where his sin was. And so he starts, "I'm going to give 4 times what I've taken unjustly." And he's saying things that are way beyond, even if he'd been convicted of stealing the money. And it was actually legal to do everything he had done in overcharging people for taxes, and everything he had done was legal to enrich himself by exploiting his countrymen. But even if he'd been convicted of stealing that money, he would have only been required to pay back double. And he's offering to pay back 4 times as much. There's not just repentance there. There's a guy who at heart was meant to be generous, being who he was born to be. And now, if we've got our verse, Jesus' response is to say, "Today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham." He's saying something extraordinary there. He has redeemed and restored. He's telling all the crowd that defined Zaccheus by the pain he has caused them and by the things he has taken from them. That's not who Zaccheus is. It's not how you define Zaccheus. Zaccheus is a son of Abraham. He's chosen. And Jesus says he came to find and restore lost. And that's not just for the sake of the lost. To restore what was lost benefits the person who lost it. We lose something when we lose Zaccheus. Zaccheus is not just being restored for Zaccheus' sake. He's being restored to us because he belongs to us. He's valuable to us. He's a son of Abraham. Jesus restores him just by recognizing who he is. He's not a son of Abraham because salvation has come to his house. Salvation has come to his house because he's the son of Abraham. Jesus reaches out to him because he has value that is innate and that may be hidden but is not destroyed by the terrible things he's done. We find ourselves in Zaccheus' place. But to me, the cruelest thing in the world is to be in Jesus' place in that story.
Thank you.
You're a comforter to the lonely, the lifter of my head. I see you veiled in majesty. We cry glory, glory. We cry glory to the Lord, my heart cries out. Lord, my heart cries out. Glory to the King, my greatest love in life. I hand you everything. Glory, glory, I hear the angels sing. Open my ears, let me hear your voice to know that sweet sound. Oh, my soul rejoice, glory, we cry, glory, I hear the angels sing. God the Father, true, the Father. How perfect is your love.
Jesus, when we look into your face and we see the love that you look at us with, we understand that your desire is to create in us the very people that you created us to be. That what your love and grace desires to do in our hearts is not necessarily add things that aren't there, but take away the things that stop what's being in our lives that you designed to be. Your grace makes it possible for us to become the people that you intended us to become. And we learn that to be true when we discover that you genuinely are all that we need as individuals. You're all we really need. This morning as we sit together, we open our hearts to that truth. We pray that your grace would work within us, even now. As we draw this service to a conclusion, our hearts will sing and declare that you are all I need. Our longing is to be available to you, to reflect the depth and the wonder of your grace to many others. We continue to dream towards that end. But we recognize too that it must be true for us. It must be true that you are all I need.
Salvation, you bring life to every nation.
Otherwise, you might want to get a rock.
We were kids, it was always on a Sunday night. So the only way I got to see it was that my little brother would pretend to be sick.
Dynamics can be applied in those circumstances. What we're trying to do is, your opening statement is, we are relational beings. You can't escape that. Because we